Hello everyone, my name is Netra Kher. Welcome to the Mental Wellness Studio by Disha. Today we are in conversation with Ms. Mugdha Baure. She is a sports psychologist.
Hi.
We will be talking with her first of all by understanding what is sports psychology. So I would like to talk with you, Mugdha, about first of all what is sports psychology and what is scope for it, especially in India.
Sports psychology, it's being a very new concept, especially in India, as you said, and it's a growing field in recent times, and it's become now one of the most important branches in what we call it as sports science. So, sports science, I mean, where it is included like fitness, it's nutrition, as well as it is strength and conditioning and skill training. So now sports psychology has become one of the major aspects, or I would say branches of sports science. The scope in India, it is definitely growing, and sports field as such is growing in India. So the demand for sports science field is also on a very high rise. So I feel that mental health, what we cover in sports psychology is basically we talk about mainly mental toughness for athletes, because this is directly what we deal with the athletes. So their mental makeup, their mental strength, what we call it. So this is all which gets covered in sports psychology as a field.
Okay, next term which generally gets coined up more is mental training or mental fitness you are talking.
Yes.
So can you elaborate more on why mental training has become a need for this area, especially in sports psychology?
Okay, mental training, basically earlier what the concept was when athletes used to train in, especially in the field of sports, be it any sport, all the support staff, including the coaches, including the parents and athletes themselves, they used to focus more on the physical aspects of a sport. So we used to see, or we still see, athletes training for 5 to 6 hours in a day, doing their fitness training for an hour or 2 hours. But nothing was done when it comes to their mind, the mental state. Because what we see is when it comes to practice, the athletes, the players are all relaxed. Their performance is extremely good when it comes to practice. But then there was a question mark, the same athlete going into the tournaments or competitions and not giving a same kind of a performance that they give it in practice. Then the realization started happening as to mind again was an important aspect which was ignored. I would definitely say it was ignored up till now, because the athletes were not trained on how to handle pressure, on how to handle the expectations, the fear of failure, the stresses, the pressures that they face in a very compact situation like a competition or a tournament. So since then, mental training has become, I think, the need of the hour, I would say.
Can you give me one example of this?
For example, as I said, in practice sessions, if I'm dealing with, for example, a cricket player, when it comes to practice, they are completely focused on their skill aspects. They are completely focused on the techniques that they have been taught by the coaches, and the focus is completely on what I need to do in practice sessions. So there are no pressures at all. What if I get out? What if I don't score runs? Because even if I get out once, I have another chance. So mentally they are completely relaxed, and that's the main reason what we see. When you are completely relaxed, the performance actually goes on. It is an improved performance. But the same player going into the tournament with having expectations from themselves, from the coaches, from the parents, and putting all that burden onto themselves, is not even able to score one run. So that is where we see that even though the skills are well developed, the fitness training is happening on a regular basis, the mind is not trained. So this is the difference what we see, and that's the reason why sports psychology or mental training is picking up so well. And even the athletes have started realizing that even though I'm physically fit, I'm on skill wise I'm excellent. If I am not mentally tough, or if I don't know how to handle the pressures, then it's of no use at the time when it comes to performance.
As we are talking right now about athletes, I would like to extend my question on the same point. That what do mental trainers work on with athletes, especially not with the coaches or anything, but especially with the athletes? What is the work of a sports counselor?
Okay, sports psychology is basically what we involve. I would say it's a triangle because we as mental trainers or sports psychologists do not only work isolated with the athlete, but it's a triangle because we have to work with the coaches, we have to work with the parents as well as the athlete, because he roams around in all the three areas. When he's on the ground or on the sports arena, he's with the coaches. When he's at home, he or she is at home, it's the parents. And when over here, we are the mental trainers for them. So the first and foremost, we need to understand as sports psychologists what are the beliefs and basically the thought processes that the athlete is carrying with himself or herself at the time of performance.
Okay.
Once we understand the beliefs, once we understand the thought processes, the meaning of mental toughness is the thought process, the understanding of thought process. Then as mental trainers, what we do is how do we change the thought process, which is most of the times, 90% of the times, if we deal with athletes, we get to know that the mental process or the thought process is usually on a negative side.
Okay.
There are self-doubts that they have in themselves. Then there is fear about
fear
their
of
performance.
failure.
Fear of failure. What if I'm not able to perform?
Yeah.
What will my coaches say? What will my parents say? There is also a fear of getting selected into the team. So they carry the burden of all of these things into the game.
Is there an example, like fear of anxiety about performance also?
It is also anxiety, yes.
Yeah.
So see, when we talk about fear of failure, it carries within itself the anxiety.
Okay.
And what happens is when an athlete is under pressure, the performance is definitely not going to happen because the muscles are going to get tightened up.
Okay.
And the kind of flexibility, the kind of suppleness that we need during a particular sport, if they are not having these kind of things, then obviously the performance is not going to happen. So it's a kind of a vicious circle, and to break that, the first thing that we need to hit is their thought process. And in mental training, the mental trainers try to first of all change the thought process, and then we see the impact of changed thought process on the performance.
Yeah. So when we are talking about changed in thought process, first we need to understand what thought process needs to be changed, right?
Yes.
So what are the myths about mental training in sports? I would like to know more about it.
Okay. So that's a very good question because there are many misconceptions,
especially in Indian scenario.
In Indian situation. The first and the foremost is sports psychology or mental training is a kind of a magic pill.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is not that, because as I always tell my parents as well as my athletes, that athlete is going through a process when he or she comes for a mental training session, and that process, to go through that process itself takes quite a long time. Minimum, I would say 3 to 4 months. So the process is the athlete first goes into the acceptance phase, because they've been working on a certain kind of a thought process for years together. Changing the thought process is not an easy way to do it. So me understanding the thought process, changing it, and the athlete accepting it is the first step. Once the acceptance happens, it's the absorption. When I accept it, I have to absorb it, that there are certain changes that I would need to make into my thought process.
Yeah.
So that's absorption. The third is, once I'm convinced that yes, it's going to help me, then the third phase is the implementation.
Yeah.
Then once the implementation starts happening, then the fourth is we start slowly seeing the results. So to go through this process, it minimum takes around 3 to 4 months. So it's definitely not a magic pill, which I think all the coaches, parents, and even athletes need to keep in mind. Because I have certain examples where the tournament is next week, and then athletes or parents approaching that just try and help him out because he's too much under pressure, and the next week is the tournament. So your sessions would definitely help. So 1 or 2 sessions before the tournament definitely doesn't make a difference. The second myth of sports psychology is that it is only for elite athletes. What I always say, that it's definitely not for elite athletes, but it is for all athletes who want to reach the elite level. So these are the 2 major myths that all of us, including athletes and parents and coaches, they usually go through it.
Okay. So at the end of this session, I would like to ask you, what could be the tips from your side, especially for athletes?
Okay. As mental trainer, I would say two very important things, because if I have to really talk about mental training and what are the kind of things that they can do, the list is quite big.
Yeah.
But just to summarize it, I would say the first thing is, what I would definitely tell athletes is, they have to, when they are getting into a performance or they are getting into competitions or tournaments, they have to identify first of all what are their strength areas in a particular sport that they are following. And once they start focusing on their strength area, because focus and concentration is the key to being mentally tough. So once they start focusing on their own strength areas, the focus will not shift outside themselves, and they will not lose the concentration and focus into the game. So that's one of the tips. It's definitely very, very important to attain that level, and it's very difficult. So through mental training sessions, that's what I help athletes to do. And the second tip is, all of us have an inner voice, okay, which basically speaks first before the action is taken. So if we can have that control over our inner voice, which, as I said earlier, it's 90% of the times which is negative, and that has an impact on your performance. So if we try and change the inner voice and try to make it more into a positive statement, which we call it as a self-talk in mental training, that again helps the athletes perform in a much better way. But obviously, yes, easier said than done. These are the things which the athletes will have to train themselves to a great extent, and only then they will be able to achieve these mental toughness techniques.
Yeah. I would like to first thank you for this session, and there were multiple things covered by her, starting from what is sports psychology, why mental training is important in sports psychology. She talked about myths also. She talked about tips also. What a sports psychology student or even a person who is taking mental fitness training needs to take care of. What coaches can also do. I would like to think about or drag your attention to the last point which she said I thought was very much important, is what is your inner voice, or what is your self-talk. How can you work upon it will be the most important part in changing your thought process, and it will be most important part in your mental fitness training. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.